His camera is very crisp. I would agree. His camera looks really nice. I'm like off in a corner, a little Schmeagle like.
Only the crisp is here. I mean, I am all about crispiness, if nothing else.
Oh, you left a lot of people quite crispy after that previous video.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
So
You know what's hilarious about that sort of thing is that the main thing that you get when you do a video like that is like, I just think it was too forceful. It's too much or whatever. And I'm just like, guys, I talk calmly all the time and no one cares. That's the problem, right? It's like you get mad when someone comes out with something bold, but you never listen when they're calm.
That's the worst part about, I don't know if it's, people blame the culture, they blame YouTube, they blame TikTok, they blame something, right? But it's like, if you're not having a high reaction bit of content, nobody cares. You can produce the highest quality breakdown of material. Like, this is why you should do this over this. Nobody's going to care. No one's going to watch it. You get up there and say your ideas are terrible, every person's going to watch it. Why?
Absolutely.
I don't even know why. Why? World life would be better if we didn't have to deal with that.
It's true, and it's just like, so yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. A 2-hour long video from me where I calmly go through all of the things that happen when you use virtual function calls, for example, would be more preferable to me as well.
It really,
but no one watches it.
No one watches it. No one cares. I tried to produce a really high. So on my main channel, I've been producing like these higher quality videos, and one of them was this one going over Rust enums, comparing them to TypeScript enums. Like, why are they different? What makes them different? And why is Rust enums so cool versus why is TypeScript enums like they're just terrible?
Okay.
And worst performing video of all time. I show why is something really fast. People love it, right? That's all you gotta do is just like put a graph up with some numbers, and people are like, ooh, I feel smart. But you're like, this is why you technically could break down. And people are like, I can't listen to this shit. Okay, it's way too boring. Okay.
Yep.
Cool story.
They just want to see oh man, Prime's dissing on enums, right? Like,
hell yeah.
That's what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
They didn't want the data. Yeah.
They didn't.
Oh well.
All right, so hey, let's introduce you for those that don't know who you are. Could you give like a little story about you? I know you used to stream on Twitch quite frequently, right? If I'm not mistaken, as well.
I did, and I probably will again. I just have been pressed for time. So yeah, my name's Casey Muratori. I am old, probably much older than everyone else here. I will be 47 this year, I want to say. So
nice.
I'm
Wisdom.
Maybe, or just elderly. Either way. I've been in the game industry since I was like a little baby child. I like started working in the game industry right out of high school when I was like 18, and I just kind of never stopped really. My early job was at like a startup that didn't really go anywhere. Then I worked at a place called Gas Powered Games, which did a game called Dungeon Siege, which some people may remember, but it wasn't particularly huge. Then I worked at Rad Game Tools for quite some time, and that's where I did most stuff that people who have actually used stuff I've written will have used it from.
Are you telemetry guy?
Company... Sorry?
Did you make telemetry?
No, Brian Hook originally was the guy who made telemetry. I did their 3D character animation stuff, and that's used in, you've probably played a game that used it if you're old enough. I mean, I haven't been there in a long time, but it was used in all sorts of stuff. Was used as the baseline for Destiny's character pipeline, for example. So that's probably one of the newer games, but it goes all the way back to like, it was used in EverQuest 2. It was used in Age of Mythology. It was used in, all these games. There's like, I don't know, 5,000 SKUs or something, because that's how licensing game works. And I also worked on the first version of Big 2. So that's the thing that plays video in like all the games like ever written. So, if you ever watched a cutscene in a game, it was probably played through a Bink video. It's used everywhere. So, and that first came out, I guess, on Gears of War 3. The previous Gears of War games were the previous version of Bink, which I didn't work on, but everything after that was Bink 2. So I done a ton of that stuff. Lately, I work on independent stuff, and I also worked on some of the stuff for the game The Witness with John Blow. But that's my sort of that's my sort of career. I've never really done any of the stuff that you work on. I've never really done much of. So like web backend stuff or that sort of thing. I've never really worked in that space.
Okay. That's you can take a lot. There's a lot of similarities in some sense between the two spaces. I mean, in the end, it's all programming. It's all becoming good at what you're doing, learning, and trying to become excellent. Hopefully, excellent. I think the game dev space, people strive for excellence at a much higher rate than on the website.
It's probably true, but I think part of that is just because they're forced to. Like if your game runs at 1 frame a second, like nobody will play it. So you're kind of like forced to do it in a way. I don't know that it's like, I don't know that we're more virtuous. I think we're just forced to. I don't know. Maybe that's pessimistic, but you know what I'm saying?
No, I get it. You can't, because you can't literally release the game. No one's going to play it when somebody else can release, say, 30, 60, 120, 144, whatever game it is. Why would you ever play the 14 frame per second game? It's just not going to work.
Exactly. And I think web users are more forgiving is part of that reason. If web users like just refuse to use sites that were at 60 frames a second, right? Web devs would learn it pretty quick, I bet, because they'd have to, right? So I think it's like that's a lot of where that sort of like comes from, if that makes sense. That's my guess anyway. Just being forced to.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so you recently released a video on YouTube, and obviously I think you got a lot of praise and probably a lot of blowback. How was the blowback? How was it? Was it bad? Did people reach out to you on Twitter or any did you get messages being aggressive? What was it like?
So here's what I'll say. If this was my, I wish I had one of those like old politician phrases to spin here. If this was my first time around the apple cart, whatever one of those old things were. If this were my first time doing this sort of thing, I might have been off-put by the response, but it wasn't. So actually, my take this time around was I was shocked at how positive the response was. Because I was expecting that the people who would react to this video would all be like, oh, this guy's just an idiot, because I'm just used to that, right?
Yeah.
I actually got so many people going like, oh my God, thank you for saying that. All of these stupid ideas that people make me do at my company, I hate them, and our code base is terrible, and it takes us forever to do anything, and I'm just glad somebody put out something, right?
Yeah.
That's like assailing this. I wasn't expecting that, right? I was expecting the video to be largely ignored, but to the extent that it was paid attention to, it would probably just be negative. And I was like, well, it's fine. This was just stuff from the beginning of my performance-aware programming course that I'm doing that didn't make it into the prologue because we were looking at other things. That's basically what it was, right?
Yeah.
And so I was actually pleasantly surprised. I mean, yes, I'm sure there are plenty of like Reddit threads are just like, this guy's an idiot, and that's fine because that happens no matter what you say. You could be like, hey, E equals MC squared, and they'd be like, what a dumb guy. Like, oh,
he didn't even derive it himself.
What? Yeah.
No, yeah. But real talk, that's a good point, which I think prohibits a lot of people from jumping into this game in general, is that they're worried, people are going to say mean things, or they start putting up something and people get super upset. But the reality is that what you said, especially in that video, for those that don't know, I think I actually have the video right here. Clean code, horrible performance right here. Oh my goodness, it was so easy to agree with it, but it was so easy to disagree with it. It's a masterclass in titling, presentation, and everything. But more so, it really highlights this thing that I've seen so much throughout my years in programming, which is just this continuous layer of abstraction. It may not follow exactly clean code principles. People do it with functional programming, right? We had someone bring in the Ramda library into our television application because they just wanted currying. So every function happened to be like 3-4 levels of currying, which is just like not optimal whatsoever in any world in JavaScript. I know JavaScript can do functional things. It doesn't mean it should do functional things. And it was just crazy to debug. I couldn't figure it out. And they're like, oh, it's so ergonomic. I'm like, I just want to be able to print something to tell me where I'm at because I can't figure out anything right now. All the exceptions are on the same line and I don't know where the hell I'm at, right? Like, this is really painful. And so I was very happy to see this. As far as this all went, what kind of led you down this path of getting frustrated and saying this? Because I assume this type of programming that we see here isn't really heavily used in game programming. One would venture to say, just because of the performance considerations.
So I guess there's two parts to that. One is like, is it used in game programming? And I think actually the answer to that is it actually is, frustratingly so. So a lot of people who were previously into performance or tried to do things sensibly have actually been unhappy by the proliferation of things like abstractions in game development. And I think this is kind of inevitable for a number of reasons. The main one being that as systems become extremely powerful, you end up in a situation where, okay, even if we assume we're taking 80% of the performance of this game, right, and we're spending it all on like these well-optimized graphic subsystems and physics and whatever, the 20% that's not that or whatever is getting fatter every year because the total system performance is going up, right?
Yeah.
So that other part gets fatter and fatter, which leaves room for people to experiment with their weird abstraction ideas, which are not always bad. Experimentation isn't bad, right? Sometimes we come up with good stuff. But other times it creates this bad area with no feedback loop because no one's pushing the performance of that area. And that's where you get into these things where like all of a sudden you have these games where like they're CPU limited all of a sudden. Like people are doing benchmarks on them and they put in these like 4090 GPUs and it doesn't get any faster. And you're like, what's going on? It's like, well, guess what? We're doing that same stuff, right? That you just said game developers don't do. It's like, yeah, we're doing them. There's going to be all kinds of JSON and virtual functions and all this stuff going on in there. So, there's like, I think there's a bit of that going on, and that makes me grumpy, certainly, because I don't think it's actually helping. To your point, it's like a lot of times it's actually just harder for programmers to use.
It is.
The other side of it is just software in general these days. Oh my God, it's so slow. Everything I use, man, it's so slow.
I've been using, I use Twitter on my web app. I don't actually put a mobile app on it because I always I just like to use the web app for things. And for a long time, up until these last 2 months, I could not have a web app open longer than maybe 4 hours. Like I'd come back to it later in the day and I'd try to scroll the notifications and it would just crash and be like the page is not responding. I'd have to refresh it. And I'd do this multiple times a day. Only just recently has it actually got any better. And people they just don't, it doesn't seem that there's a lot of care in the web world, or maybe there's just a lot of forgiveness in the web world, as you said, but there just is no, like, it doesn't seem to be there. So
yeah, no, I mean you're absolutely right, and I think again, to me, it just comes down to: are you forced to do something, or are you not forced to do it? Because, like, to your point, you said Twitch, right? You work for Netflix, yeah?
Yeah.
So why does someone choose Netflix or Twitch as a product? Well, it's the content, right? It's like they're going to go to Twitch because your channel's on it and they want to watch your channel or something, right? They're not going to go to it because Twitch ships the best web app. There is some competitive advantage to shipping good quality stuff, and we have seen that in the case of things that were interchangeable. I usually use like MapQuest and Google Maps as an example. Like once Google Maps came up with fast maps you could scroll, no one wanted to use MapQuest anymore, right? So if you can serve the same content, then things like performance matters. But otherwise, it's like, okay, like let's suppose Netflix's app sucks or their website sucks. Well, I got to watch the show that's on it if I want to watch the show that's on it. I don't have the option of paying someone else for a better Netflix that just has the same content. And so I do think that there's just this inherent problem of it's hard to compete on just performance because most web services are somewhat monopolistic on their content. And so you can't have competition on performance. It's just up to that company to decide to deliver a good user experience, but they don't have to.
So it's, it is an interesting take, but I think a lot of that is an unmeasured take in some sense.
Maybe.
3 years ago or 4 years ago, I started pushing on this thing we did at Netflix called Destiny. I've talked about this a few times on chat if you haven't heard it. But effectively, Destiny would be, as you scrolled through Netflix, whatever was kind of surrounding your cursor, we'd go, okay, which one are you most likely to play? Let's take the top 2 or the top whatever, and let's start downloading, say, the manifest. The manifest contains like, hey, where's the video actually at? Here's the license to play the video, all the stuff, and then maybe even download a couple seconds of the video, something to kind of give it so that when you pressed play, it would just go fast. And I said, hey, I think this is problematic. I think we're actually we're doing a disservice to our app doing this. No one from data science and engineering all the way to my manager said, no, we can't turn that off. We've already measured this. This was a win. There'd be no reason why we'd turn it off. So I got somebody, and I got it turned off. I just kind of went a little bit behind some backs, did a little systems test, and said, hey, look at this. Errors are really reduced. We're having less crashes on device. I think there's something here. So my boss was like, okay, there is definitely something here. Why don't you give it a try? So I allocated a couple million people to the test and said, okay, no more pre-play for you. And of course, I called the test Fate, the fate of destiny. I thought it was pretty clever. People kind of liked it. Some people didn't, because it was, I was stepping on a lot of toes doing this, and it ended up being multi-million dollars a year of revenue increase simply because people could use the product. If there is Stranger Things, people aren't going to play Stranger Things if they can't use the product, right? Like, they're just going to be like, too bad, I won't do this anymore, right? And so there is some level.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great news. I mean, in other words, if more people knew that story, that would be awesome, right? Because I don't have any stories like that because I don't work on those products. So I have no way to convince people that performance hurts them other than giving examples like, hey, would you rather use a Windows CE device or an iPhone? And what was the difference between those, right? Performance. Yeah. I would love it if we could get more stories like that would convince people, because I believe it sort of in my heart that when people use a slick product that's like super responsive and they touch something and it instantly responds, that they do engage more. But I can't prove it. But like what you just said is a way to prove it, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I can find myself doing that in the sense that when I jump on and I'm going to watch a family movie with the kiddos and everything. So I'm going to first go to Netflix and kind of try to find that movie because it's just a better experience. Then I know, crap, I'm going to have to download or I'm going to have to rent this from Amazon Prime. I start feeling this anxiety because I know I have to first go to www.amazon to rent it because they're fighting with Google. Then after that, I'm going to rent it. Then I'm going to go to Amazon, and they have such an unpolished product that they don't even show me the thing I just got done renting. Then I don't want to search because every time you press the key, there's a good second and a half delay. So I'm like, twice. And then I watch it. I'm like, okay, got it twice. Now do it again. And then just like the anxiety. I try to avoid using the product just to avoid this situation. It is so frustrating. And so I feel like there's something there, but it's like, again, anecdote versus I need a million people to prove that there is probably a there.
But at least you have one anecdote, and that's really good, right? Because, I should say you have one proved anecdote. Like you took a thing that was hypothetical and like actually demonstrated it, and that's awesome. I wish more people would do that because then we would know, right?
Mm-hmm. That's actually what our team is doing now at Netflix. We're really trying to go into this and making it so that we can actually prove that there is value in these things, because it makes no sense not to. If we think there could be, it could mean a lot, right? And so when you're at a scale at least like Netflix or Google or Amazon, a simple change that makes people 0.01% happier is a lot when you're talking about billions in revenue. So,
well, and I would point out the fact that it's not like with games, for example, there's no reason why someone can't play, especially if you took a game like okay, so The Witness, which I worked on, if that thing ran at 10 frames a second, well, it's still totally playable. It's not an action game. You could just play it that way, right? So there has to be a reason why everyone liked playing it at 60 frames a second, and that just feels a lot better and more engaging. It's like there's not a lot of reason to suspect that somehow whatever brain process is going on that they were like, ooh, I like this game better because it's at 60 frames a second. I mean, why wouldn't that happen everywhere? Like, it doesn't make sense that humans would suddenly stop wanting that continuous feedback just because they went to Amazon to shop instead of The Witness to play these puzzles. Like, it's not just action games, right? If it was just action games and no one cared what the frame rate was on anything else, then you'd say, sure. But people want that smooth experience everywhere. And so logically, it seems like it would carry over, right?
Yeah, it does. All right, so let's switch a little bit of a gears, because I think that you might have some similar feelings I do. So I have this big thing, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit about like until web devs are required. Here's the real question for you. How much would you want to improve performance or write this code that is well written, that performs well? How much would that motivate you if there was no material or perceptual gain? Right? Like in the sense that no one would actually care if it ran at 10 frames or 100 frames. There was no anything. you didn't care, I didn't care, would that drive you still to do anything?
Gosh, that's a really interesting question. I love it. It's kind of like philosophical, right?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'd say is it's a little bit hard for me to say. I do feel like I have a natural. I mean, one of the things people criticize me for being critical, which I suppose is an odd thing, but I get it, and right. But I agree with them, right? I am a critical person, and I'm not a critical person just of other people's stuff. I'm very critical of my own stuff. Like, if you want to talk to me about one of my code bases, I will be the first person to point out all of the things in it that I think I did wrong. I'll be like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. I could have done better here. I should have known this. I've learned this recently, so I obviously screwed that up, right? So part of, I think, the reason I do things is just because I am a naturally critical person, and I also criticize myself. If nobody in the world, including me, cared about performance, then I can't really predict whether I would be critical of things I did that weren't performance oriented, because it might just be that the reason I criticize those things is because I know performance does matter. And so I criticize things I do where I could have done a better job on performance. It's really hard for me to guess what I would do if it wasn't. So that's I don't know if I can really guess. I mean, I will always be someone who criticizes the things that they themselves do for being low quality. Every time I do something that I think is low quality, I'm like, I should have done that better in my head, if nowhere else. And so I just don't know. I know that would still be there, but would it include performance? I don't know.
Interesting. So follow-up question. This is going somewhere. When you do the dishes, clean your house, how well do you do it? Do you do it just to get it done, or do you do it to do a good job?
So if I could just do none of it, I would.
Of course. If I could do none, I would also do none as well.
I do not care about it at all. Like cleaning to me is like just the barest minimum I can do. I'll give you an example. I buy the same, like literally, I will just buy as my quote unquote wardrobe 10 of the same pair of pants because it will save me time getting dressed because I don't have to think about matching clothes.
I literally do the same.
One pair.
I buy this is I have 6 or 7 of this exact shirt. Maybe
nice.
Different colors. I don't know. My wife buys them for me too. She just puts them all in a drawer alongside the pants, and that's that.
Yes.
And I wear a black hoodie every day. I just like, just give it to me. I just unhook it, shirt, hoodie, go. That's it.
Yes. And so, obviously, one thing it's clear, I don't know if this is where your question's going, but one thing that's clear to me is like, I only really care about the code. That's just like what I like to do. And I don't care if I was going to go do something else that I thought needed to be done well, maybe, but I'm just not. I'm just a computer person. Since I was very, very little, I sat at a computer. Like, we had these terminals at home back in the 70s, and I just it's what I do. I don't know. I'm bad at everything else.
So I have this weird kind of thing. I don't know what it is, but even if I try to do, even if I'm cleaning and I take a shortcut, there's something inside of me that even as I do it and I walk away, it's just like, you could have done better. You could have done that better. Like, every time I play any video game, I don't play to just beat the game or to enjoy the experience, though I do enjoy the experience. I also play to be the best I've ever tried to be in that moment. Because it's just like there's this driving feeling inside of me that I just really want to be good at whatever I do. So even if it's not important, even when no one's looking, like when I'm building my little dumb tools for something at work or something, I don't even use like array.map because I'm sitting there thinking, it's going to create a function. I don't really want to create a function here. Like, I don't like that. I don't want to create a closure. Like, I'm still thinking through all these things that are worthless. But it's just like there's something about it that drives me when I know I could have done better.
That's actually really cool. I think that may be, though, a distinct personality type from me. I see what you're going for, or getting at there, rather, I should say. And I guess I would say is yours is probably the better of the two. Like you could probably go be like a CEO or something and like run a important company or something, right? Because to you, all the things are in that umbrella of let's do a quality job. To me, I'm like the dude who'll be in some shack with no like they just have these threadbare clothes and no food, and they're just like typing at the keyboard trying to like figure out this one last little puzzle they're working on, and everything else is like a disaster and everything, right? I think I'm more of like an obsessive about one thing, and I don't have that ability to say, hey, we should do the whole thing well, right? And being able to do the whole thing well is probably better, or because it will help you split your attention too, to like realize that other things should be done well, you know? I don't know, but that's my guess.
To be fair, or to be frank, like I don't do a lot of things well in some sense. Like right now, my office is really dirty. But until I clean it, once I clean it, I'm going to try to do a good job. I always try to do these things like, okay, if I just pick up 4 things and just do this over time, it will naturally get clean. I don't know why. I always fall apart. It never actually ends up working out. It feels like it should work out, but it just never does. I can never do the spread out good job. I always have to just like do the thing, or I just can't do it well.
I can relate to that part, certainly. It's like I can only really focus on this one thing, right? If you tell me there's 10 things going on, I'm like, right?
Yeah.
School was always hard in that case, like going to like public school in the, when I was a kid or whatever. It's like, how am I supposed to study 4 subjects? Give me one. Like I'll do one and I'll study it, but I can't do 4. Yeah, my brain doesn't split tasks.
Yeah, I would always struggle in school with that exact same concept, which is I would order them according to when they're due, and I'm not a procrastinator either. And I would just start and just like, okay, I got to do this one thing, and then do it for 16 hours in a day, and be like, okay, I now have one thing done. I got 5 days left. Like, how do I organize my next whatever?
Wow.
Like,
okay, so here's what I did in school, just to underscore the difference here. This is what I say. Your personality type is better in general.
I don't know about that.
Done. Just trust me on this one. You're good. You're in a good zone. So what I did was I would come home from school and I'd program all day. Well, more specifically, I'd program all night. I'd go to sleep and only get like 4 hours of sleep. I'd go to school. I'd come home from school and go to sleep because I was exhausted. Wake up and start programming again. All of the homework was pushed till like the very last, like the night before, and I would do the barest minimum. It was horrible. I was not a good student, in case you're wondering.
I did get a 2.14 or 2.16 in high school, so I wasn't a good. It was until college. When I went to college is where I just like exploded. Is when I realized how I should organize myself. I was a disaster in my younger years.
That big of a split. You like went from high school not doing homework or procrastinating and stuff like that, and then in college you were like, I'm on it.
Well, there was like this whole meth scene and other addictions that went on in betwixt those two in betwixt those 2 moments, and then afterwards, life changed. But once,
dude, you're gonna have like a documentary about you at some point. This is like a real drama with all the phases and stuff.
Well, the thing is it's hard to know what something's worth until you don't have it.
That's a very good point.
And so when I was losing the things, I realized how good I really did have it. That's the hard part, is that I think it's really easy to complain or be unhappy. And maybe this is why I like trying to do things well, even if they're worthless things, is that, when you don't have it, you wish you always did.
That's awesome. I love the show more and more. I've seen your show a couple times, as you know, and like I've loved it every time. And this episode is fantastic. I love all the stuff you're saying.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I really do. You're actually, I think if right here, if we go like this, hey, community, what do you think of Casey? I think we're going to get a lot of like based #awesome because we were clapping and loving your content. You're a good guy. Yeah, look at that. You got based, awesome, purple hearts.
I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone out there.
But so you said you're doing a course. What's your course on?
So the course is literally on like what we were just kind of alluding to. It's called Performance Aware Programming.
You have a link?
Yeah, it's just computerenhance.com. I'll try to type it in. I don't know if I can type it in here. Let's see.
No, I think I got it. Computerenhance.com. Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. Here, I'm going to spam it in the chat.
Okay. Appreciate it. It's just all it is I was sitting around and I'm going like, look, I think I see the disconnect here, or I see a disconnect that I can close. People, when they think about performance these days, and I see it all the time, what they're thinking in their head is like, oh, like big Unix beard type guy is like in the machine room with circuit diagrams of the processor, right? Like
breaking down the exact assembly.
Like figuring out that like if he does this thing on an so that it'll change the electrical voltage in between on the half cycle, they can use the DMA engine in the other parts. Like, okay, yes, that is like demo scene and like super hardcore game programming people or whatever. Yes, that is a thing. And it used to be that that's what code optimization meant. And if you were talking about speeding up code, you were doing all that stuff. We're going to run this on the processor and the disk drive of the Commodore 64, right? Like, and I think, unfortunately, that idea held over till today. But actually, nowadays, it's like, hey, if you compile that Python program, it'll get like several times faster, right?
Yeah, it's like it's not even hard. It's not even a hard thing to do.
Or if I taught you how to rewrite a few things in C, just little things in C, no memory management, none of that, just basic little like math loops in C, you could use Python to call out of your Python program into something that's going to be as fast as C because it literally is C after you get the function call done, right? So it's basically a course that's based on the idea of teaching people that optimization is not actually as hard as you think it is because there's so much fat in today's programs that you can speed them up by dizzying, like staggering orders of magnitude, like 100x magnitude, without doing any of those fancy things. So what we do in the class is I basically take you through one of those kind of, I take you through all the sort of knowledge, generally speaking, that one of those old school optimizer people, what were they actually trying to do, basically? And then so that you understand the idea of what makes computer performance, right? And then I just show you how today we have so much stuff stacked on top of that that we can basically go just by knowing what would be fast. Just by knowing that, we can go all the way up to like really huge multiples of performance without ever having to actually get down into there. Just by knowing it once, by seeing once what the processor does, you never really have to do it again. Now you'll know, and like I think you just said something kind of like that. You were like, hey, I'm not going to use this map because I know it's going to create a function. It's like, that knowledge came from understanding something about performance. Once you have the knowledge, you don't need to do any like fancy low-level optimization.
Yeah.
You just now know, oh, this would not be a great place to use a map. That knowledge just saved you like 10x potentially, because you really can create those dramatic slowdowns just by a few mistakes in like something like JavaScript. With the way you architect your program, you can create massive slowdowns. So that's what the course is about, just trying to teach that thing.
That's cool. That's really, really good. I really like that. But I do have a very important question about it, which is, what point in the course do you just recommend them using Rust, of course, the greatest programming language ever?
So I try in the course as much as I can to avoid challenging notions like the one you just said. So because there's an important reason for that. Again, the fat. Because I think there's so much performance on the table in modern programs that I want to encourage people to think that no matter what they are required to do, whether it's, because maybe they love Rust like you do, but they have to program Python for their job, or it has to be in JavaScript because it's whatever, right? I don't want them to think, well, the answer to how I get fast is I have to write in Rust. So if I'm not writing in Rust, well, then I guess my programs are going to have to be slow, because that doesn't have to be true. Right?
Yeah.
So I try very hard to not challenge that notion. And most of the course, as much as I can, I just have people do it in whatever language they want. Right? So if they're doing Rust, they do it in Rust. If they're doing JavaScript, they do it in JavaScript. And sometimes we have things where you have to do it in a particular language. But as much as possible, I try to encourage people to use the language of their choice.
I actually really like that because I do see that there's like this, we don't need performance. We don't think about performance. Oh, you can't really do it in this language. And it's like, well, actually, in JavaScript, there's actually quite a few ways to make it just like mind-bendingly faster. an easy one that I always tell people, which people just hate this one, especially the functional bros out there. Where's my functional bros out there? Come on, say something. But it's always like, do you know that if you just use a class and you have a reset function that resets its state back to 0 and just reuse the object, it's like mind-blowingly faster in JavaScript not to just create and let the garbage collection take control. You just take control.
Yeah.
You are now the managed memory. It works really, really well. It's not even that hard.
Yep. No, I mean, just thinking of it as, hey, this is how many of these things I have, and I just reuse them.
Yeah.
It's the thing is, it's true in every language. Yeah. In every language, that's two things. It's always faster. I don't care what language you're using to not go through a memory allocator, whether it's manual or garbage collected, just don't do it. That's always faster. But two, it's more stable because you don't have all these weird proliferating things where, oh, someone forgot to free that thing or someone's creating it way too many of these, or it's like, no, if you had to think about, like, we've just got a few of them, it ends up being more stable in my experience.
Yeah, that is it's a fact of life. It's fun, and plus it's kind of like a fun thing to do. I think people kind of forget how fun it is to kind of golf your way into like some better things. Like, okay, hey, I wrote this. Let's just take a pass, and what can we do to make this just better? Even just inspecting it, because most problems in applications aren't like. I mean, rarely you do run into this where it's like, oh, you were using object copy that does a deep copy versus just an assign or some, like some very rare thing that happens. But
people don't know, right? Yeah. And this is why I say performance aware versus optimization. I kind of try and draw that line because it's like, look, if you don't know what a CPU does, why would you differentiate between a deep copy and a regular copy or any of those things? Because to you, it's just the semantics of does the program work? And so your brain has just been taught to think about, well, what one of these things in this language that's very abstract do I want to have happen? I'll just pick that. You're never thinking about what the CPU actually has to do. So to you, something that takes the CPU 5 minutes is the same as something that the CPU can do instantaneously because there is no consideration of it, right? And so that consideration is the most missing piece. We don't need to learn how to get 100% of the horsepower out of that CPU. I think we just need to learn how to remember it's there, I guess is the way I would say it.
And so you call this, like, what was the phrase? You call it like pessimizing? What's the phrase?
Oh, so yeah, I mean, and in fact, you hit upon this. I remember watching your reaction video, which
I've never even heard this term. I never even heard the term. I was like, what is this term?
Yeah, you notice I don't use it anymore because nobody knows what it is. So I was like, okay, forget it. We're not using that term. That's where I came up with performance aware. So I just say performance aware. I used to use pessimization because it's the opposite of optimization, right?
Yes. It's a beautiful term now that when I realize it's a great term. I love good wordplay. It's a great term.
It just, no one knows what it is. And your reaction video was just further icing on that cake. I was like, because I watched your video. I loved that video. I even sent you, I don't know if you saw it, on Twitter. I was like, I watched your video and I loved it. Because I was expecting someone to just be like, oh, this guy's an idiot. That's normally what I expect, right? And it was great because you criticized parts of the video. You liked parts of the video. Everything you said was smart. I loved it. It was like, this is I would watch reaction videos all day long of my videos. I mean, no one's going to, you're one of the few people who reacts to my videos. So who am I kidding? But point being, it was great. And I really enjoyed it. And I was like, and I learned something from it. I'm like, hey, a smart person watched my video and told me some things about it that I can learn from. So that was awesome. And anyway, but by that point, I'd kind of already realized that don't use the word pessimization. It doesn't land. So that's why I kind of got rid of it. But it's this idea that in addition to optimizing code, we can also pessimize code. We can do things that make it harder for the CPU to run it for no real reason. Like we had two things we could choose to do here, and we arbitrarily somewhat chose this much worse one because of some other weird metrics that I don't necessarily know where they come from, like clean code, that I don't feel like anyone ever proved really made anyone more productive, but I can prove they make the CPU less productive. So it seems like a bad trade. And that was pessimization.
There's this weird thing I think that we all have in our head as programmers, which is, what if I add one more? And I feel like this has created an abstraction complex among everybody. It's just like, well, we could have tomorrow. It's like, yeah, we will. And when we do, we could consider something different. But for now, I always just do like 1D programming because there's no need. Like, I don't care if we add new things tomorrow. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Today, I just want to make it work and make it nice. And tomorrow, if it really truly does call for this really abstract concept, then we can do it. But almost always has the abstract concept looked clean on a single line where I could be like .get type or whatever. But the shit behind it is crazy. And the moment you need to change, you're like, I have to burn the whole thing down. I can't remember what I did, and it's completely confusing.
So that thing that you literally just said is one of the biggest things that if we could just stop people from doing it, it would make a huge, huge impact. Because what happens is people, and you know, I think I'm a pretty good programmer, but I've definitely worked with some of great programmers, right? So I've seen what they can do. And so I think I have a pretty good handle on, like, if I was to think of the best programmer I know, what do I think their capabilities are? And this programmer is going to be like way better than the average, like your John Carmacks, those kind of guys. I know
we have one at Netflix. His name is Kevin Lee.
There you go. So you know that guy, you can think of who that guy is, right? And the thing is, when I think about that, I know that even them, don't really have the ability to think through an entire complex programming problem without actually doing the programming. They have to see all of the details before they really get it. And usually they have to do it and then they'll change some stuff after. They're like, oh, I see how that went. Now I'm going to revise what I did because there was a better way. Right?
Oh my goodness, I love this. Keep going.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying though, right? Maybe I'm missing the mark here because someone out there's thinking about the best programmer they know, and that's not true. But like literally every best programmer I know, where I looked at that person like, holy crap, this person's amazing. This was true of them. And so the way I think of it, and it's absolutely true for me, because if it's going to be true for them, it's going to be true for me. That's just a given. But I feel it in practice, is that I can't predict the correct code structure for something I haven't done yet. So if, by definition, I'm choosing a particular code path because I think it does something that I want to take advantage of in the future, I almost always tell myself no, because I'm wrong. Not because it wouldn't be great to be able to do that, but because you're wrong. That won't be the design that you actually want when you go to do the thing that you haven't done yet.
Let's go! So, this is so good. No, this is totally true. Oh my goodness.
What happens to me is that, and I still do it today sometimes because the voice doesn't kick in.
I know it doesn't. I do it too. Oh my goodness.
And so every time something I do goes smoothly, it's because I remembered write the damn thing first. That just does literally what you were trying to do, and then you will see. After you do that, which only takes like a day or two, right? Yeah. Because you're not thinking about anything else. You're just writing this little thing that does something fairly simple. And then you will see what the correct design was for that, and you just make some modifications to put that into a nice, simple state, and then you're done. And when the time comes, because it will come, and this is fine, when you decide you need to change it, you just write that one new piece and you move the design around a little bit to accommodate it. And it goes very smoothly because you're always working with the actual ground truth. You actually have the thing running, so you know whether or not the design works because it is literally working. Predictive design, except
disaster.
1 in a million, fails.
First off, this is great talk. I love this. I love this so much. You know, I get shit on one of my most controversial opinions, I think, on the Twitter space and on everywhere else. I have TikToks describing why I'm stupid, calling me, he thinks he's a genius. I say, learn to type fast. Because you know what? You're going to get way more opportunities to make a good decision because you could just simply get your idea out there. It is worth it more than anything else in my life is just being able to type fast. And that's that. It's not a hard thing. And then, you always get the people who be like, well, I plan my stuff ahead. I can't. I'm not smart enough to plan all my stuff ahead. I have to play with it because I'm like, oh, this API is going to return a JSON object. Oh, yeah. But then it's sometimes, request times out. Sometimes we get bad requests for no reason. Sometimes it just doesn't respond. Like, it just gives you empty and you blow up your program. Like, there's like 9 different ways to hell. You don't know any of them. Just get things out there, try it out, see what's going on, and then I go back and like take some time and redesign it. Every single time. It's been the best way to write software I've ever done. And I've tried. I actually was getting my master's in software engineering. If you even realize that was a thing, it turns out it is a thing. There's a master's in software engineering, and I had to write out like sequence diagrams and UML diagrams and all of this. And we took 6 months to design this thing that's going to be running on a supercomputer. Day 1, I go and throw up like a very simple thing, too slow for a supercomputer. Couldn't even run on it. It was so bad. And I said, okay, I'm going to break this design, and I'm just going to make a bunch of public getters, because this was in Java 1.5 days, I think. And I'm like, I'm just going to make a bunch of getters, and we're going to drop all these functions and everything. Ran smoothly, was like 100 times faster. And I was like, why is this? What has happened here? And then that's when I realized you can plan all you want. You're just wrong. You just built the wrong thing is all it is.
I mean, everything you just said is it's just the truth. Like, typing fast, yes. Like, I mean, maybe you don't have to type fast. Maybe you can get the AI to do it for you or something. But whatever it is, the experimentation, the trying the actual thing is the only way you can actually get all the details out. It's too big for a human brain. That's why we use the computer to do it, right? Yeah. And so UML diagrams leave out all of the important details that actually determine how the code will run. And you can't get rid of them, right? So it's just, I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. No question.
Love it. All right. We could probably end the conversation here unless if you have more time. I don't know where we're going anymore, but this was great. I really enjoyed this a lot.
Me too. Anytime you want to do it, I'll come back.
Yeah. Here, one more time. Here's Casey's Twitter right here. Go jump on. We already linked the course a bunch. I think I actually still have it copied and pasted. There you go. Go take his course. It's a great course. It sounds like it's going to be great. I might even have to check it out. I think I'm pretty excited about this too, because I used to know a lot of stuff way more lower down, but it's been just a decade plus, so I need to kind of freshen up maybe a little bit.
I'll send you a sub. You can check it out anytime you want.
Okay, deal. Sounds good.
All right, well, thanks so much for having me on, and thanks, chat. You guys are awesome, and I guess I'll see everyone around the internet.
All right, take care, Casey.
Take it easy.